Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to be joined here today by Ron Wallace, the chair of the Coal Policy Committee. Last month, I appointed an independent committee to lead a comprehensive public engagement process that will inform Alberta's long-term approach to coal development. The Coal Policy Committee has been working hard to ensure that the engagement process is thorough and provides ample opportunity for all Albertans to get involved. The government and the committee remain committed to an open and honest dialogue with Albertans. And we recognize that there are important steps that we need to take to remove any hurdles to help ensure that we meet this important objectives. That's why today, in response to concerns raised by Albertans, I'm announcing that all coal exploration projects on Category 2 lands will be halted effective immediately. The suspension will stay in place at a minimum until public engagement is completed, at which point the results of the consultation will dictate the next steps. My office has been in contact with the affected companies, and I'm pleased to say that they've indicated their intent to cooperate with the halting of exploration activities. I also want to thank Albertans for making their voices heard. The decision is based on your input and the preliminary survey results. The Coal Policy Committee also formally recommended a pause on the exploration activity in Category 2 lands, and that was in order to ensure that the public engagement process is conducted in good faith. Moving forward, I continue to encourage all Albertans to continue participating in the engagement. The initial survey alone saw over 25,000 Albertans responding before it closed on April 19th. The committee is reviewing the results, which will inform the next steps. We do have some preliminary results in hand, and Ron will be able to speak to those more momentarily. Albertans have not shied away from sharing their thoughts on coal development, and for that I'm very appreciative. On that note, I want to acknowledge some of the concerns raised by the scope of engagement. Yes, the engagement is focused on the development of a modern coal policy, but this means that Albertans are encouraged to share all of their thoughts related to coal development. To be absolutely clear, no one will be restricted from sharing their concerns, including any environmental concerns, including impacts of coal on water. From there, the Coal Policy Committee is responsible for considering the feedback from Albertans and determining how it might apply to a modern coal policy. This will be an important part of the recommendations they provide me in their final report. Ensuring we receive a diverse range of opinions is absolutely integral to developing a modern coal policy that meets the needs of Albertans. As such, I look forward to hearing updates on the engagement process from the committee in the coming months and receiving their final report in the fall. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Ron.
Well, thank you, Minister. I appreciate those comments, and I appreciate your confidence in our committee. As I promised you on March the 29th, the Coal Policy Committee was established to engage with and to listen to Albertans. We have heard clearly that halting exploration on Category 2 lands was a necessary first step to ensure that our public engagement process can continue in good faith. Our committee has made that recommendation to the Minister, and she has accepted it. Now that the Minister has established this moratorium or halt on exploration, we encourage all Albertans to continue to participate with our committee in the widespread forthcoming public engagement over the next several months as we develop our broader policy recommendation on this matter. While our committee has only just begun its work, Albertans from all walks of life and throughout many regions of the province, have already signaled clearly their concerns for this region. The initial online survey completed on April 19th reflected an overwhelming interest on this issue for more than 20,000 Albertans. We acknowledge and appreciate that interest, that passion, and that focus expressed by so many. While taking into consideration that very significant interest in the survey, my committee nonetheless intends to further enhance our engagement with all Albertans, including with our Indigenous nations, while we explore policy options that will govern potential coal development. We know that those policies have to reflect and protect the public interest of all Albertans. While the Coal Policy Committee will require some additional time to examine the survey results in detail, I would like to share some of the preliminary analysis of that survey with you. First, the majority of respondents feel the management of the province's coal resources affect them. Second, the top-ranking issues when discussing Alberta's coal policy were identified as environmental impacts of coal development and if and where coal development takes place. The majority of respondents feel that there are areas of the province that are not appropriate for coal development, while almost one-third of respondents acknowledge that there may be areas of the province where development could be considered. Next, Albertans would like to participate in the forthcoming committee engagement process through additional online surveys and virtual meetings. Next, respondents want to learn more about the approval process for exploration and development, as well as the categories of coal, which dictate where and how coal leasing, exploration, and development can occur. And last but not least, the majority of respondents expressed material concerns about coal exploration in various areas in Alberta. These initial findings support what we are also hearing from a wide range of other Albertans, individuals, municipalities, First Nations, and landowners. It was very clear to the Coal Policy Committee that calling for a halt to exploration on Category 2 lands, would ensure that our public engagement process is both effective and credible. That's why my committee made the recommendation to the Minister, and we're very pleased that she has acknowledged this independence and that she has agreed with our recommendation. Moving forward, the committee will continue to review the results of that survey as they'll inform the next steps, phase 2 of our engagement process. I want to say in closing, it should come as no surprise that in the time since the Eastern Slopes policy and the 1976 coal policy were developed, changing times have led to changing perceptions among Albertans. We get that. Just as the climate is changing, so is the economy, and equally so are the expectations of Albertans who cherish their futures and that of their children and their grandchildren. We openly solicit engagement with those Albertans, including the Indigenous nations, who choose to embrace constructive dialogue about how these resources are to be managed and protected. As I said initially in March, we promise to hear those who choose to participate with us as we develop recommendations for sound policies on coal. This is the single most essential step to the achievement of desired outcomes and desired policies for all Albertans. At this time, I'd also like to acknowledge the work and dedication to date of my fellow Coal Policy Committee members, Mr. Fred Bradley, Mrs. Natalie Charlton, Mr. Eric North-Pagan, and Mr. Bill Trafford. I can say in closing, we look forward to hearing from Albertans, all Albertans, and we'll share more details about how they can continue to engage with us in the very near future. Thank you, Minister.
We will now take questions from the media. Operator, can you please put through the first caller?
Thank you. Yes, the first question is from Emma Graney, Globe and Mail.
Yeah, g'day. Am I able to have a question and a follow-up, first of all?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so my first question is, Mr. Wallace, you kind of referenced there about this idea of the consultations, making sure they're effective and credible being the operative word in that sentence. There is some skepticism among Albertans that there is indeed a preordained conclusion that you will reach, that you will, set out rules in such a way that the government has directed you to. What is your message to those folks? And Minister, what else can you do to ensure that this is not just actually an independent process, but also, that's how Albertans look to it as being an independent process?
I think that question is for Ron, so I'll cede the floor.
Well, thank you, Minister. Could I ask you to just repeat that? I was out of sound range there briefly.
Yeah, for sure. So there's some skepticism among Albertans that the work that your committee is doing, there is also, in fact, already a preordained outcome here, that you've got directives and that you're just going to do exactly what the government wants you to do. Now, you said yourself that you want to make sure these consultations are effective, but also credible, and that's the word I'm really zooming in on here. What else can you do to make sure that these consultations are indeed credible among the Alberta public?
Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. Recently, there have been opinions expressed about the terms of reference for the committee. And there have been a number of sensational sound bites that have preceded this announcement. I want to tell you that Albertans deserve better discussion on such an important issue. While respecting the need for an open debate on the issue, quite frankly, I disagree with the negative tone of some of those opinions that have been expressed, some of which have received widespread media attention. In reply to that, I invite Albertans to understand why I believe the committee will be of value. It's because it affords an opportunity to shape policy recommendations to the minister to reflect the expectations of Alberta through a full, fair, and responsible airing of the issues associated with potential coal development in the region. It's really important for Albertans to understand that this committee understands its primary role is the provision of independent advice to this minister, transparent advice that is predicated on an open engagement with the public. Hence, the Coal Policy Committee interprets its terms of reference as directing it to hear concerns and to make recommendations on all matters relating to coal development that fall under the responsibility of the Minister of Energy. This includes, by extension, the Alberta Energy Regulator. I'm informed by other experts that the Minister of Energy has significant and sweeping powers to direct and control on Crown or freehold mineral exploration and development in Alberta when it is in the public interest to do so, and she's done so today. The Minister's powers are contained in the Mines and Minerals Act and also RETA, the Responsible Energy Development Act. Also certain is that the government of Alberta, in reaching decisions relating to coal development, must assess issues related to potential pollution of air, land, and water, and headwater landscapes. These are required by law or regulation to be considered before any developments may proceed. I also want to say that any comments to the effect that this committee will not hear concerns from the public on air, land, or water is false. We look forward very much to hearing that discussion, and we look forward very much to reflecting responsible recommendations to this minister what will address those concerns. I hope that answers your question.
And Emma, I would just add to that of course we're going to that this is a credible process, and of course we're going to hear the recommendations. There's absolutely no preordained result of this. That's why we're setting up consultations. That's why it's set up with an independent committee. And I think our steps today with shutting down existing pre-approved exploration on Category 2 lands demonstrates that from the beginning, when we first, back in January, where we paused new leases and rescinded the ones that had been been granted when we reinstated the coal policy and at that time halted any additional exploration permits, to reaffirming to the AER and directives that they were to follow all of the restrictions in the 1976 coal policy, plus today going even one step further and halting exploration that had been approved. I think that goes for saying that this is a fiercely independent committee. So I would just add, with some of the questions, and I think Ron touched on it, on whether the process would be considered credible because of the perceived narrow scope of references. And I think he stated it really clearly. Of course, Albertans can talk about their concerns about the impact of coal on water and the environment, on tourism, and other potential uses of the area. Of course, they can talk about that. We want to hear those concerns. Notably, though, this committee is setting the coal policy. It needs to set the policy vision first and then determine if, what, and when other processes might or might not be needed. So notably, for instance, if there's no surface mining that will be permitted in a particular area, for instance, of course, downstream allocations of water, other uses of the land would be moot. So I think the point is we have to get the policy done first, the vision done first, and then determine what other processes might be needed, if, what, and when those processes would occur.
Okay, great. Thank you. You can go to the next person.
Operator, can you please put through the next question?
Thank you. Kevin Nimick, CTV Calgary.
Hi there. Question for the minister. I'm just looking at the information that was sent out regarding the coal policy survey, and it seems to be extremely vague. For example, it says, quote, the majority of Albertans feel the management of the province's coal resources affects them. Why aren't we being provided with specific data from the survey?
I think that will follow. We're still analyzing it. There was over nearly 25,000 responses. It was over 24,000 responses from all across the province. That's still being analyzed. We've been able to compile some of that into numbers that show a very clear concern from some Albertans on some issues, and that's why we're pausing. That's why we're halting the current coal exploration. That's why the committee has made that recommendation. But the remaining amount of the survey will be analyzed by the coal committee, and they'll be announcing further results. But to be absolutely clear, there was the vast majority of Albertans had indicated they had some concerns, some serious concerns with exploration continuing in Category 2 lands, and especially with that exploration continuing during the time of the consultations. We felt that that was going to undermine the good work that the committee was doing, so that needs to be halted pending the work of the committee.
And do you have a follow-up?
I do. Minister, in your capacity as an MLA, you represent Calgary Northwest. Do you think we need more restrictions right now across Alberta in regards to our COVID-19 cases seeming to spike?
Well, I think we've got the EMCC committee, Emergency Management Cabinet Committee, that's looking at those options, and they're hearing those concerns. So my colleagues, my cabinet colleagues, and myself and my caucus colleagues are listening to some of those concerns on all sides of the issues, and we'll be hearing more from them.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Andrienne Williams, CBC.
Hi. My question is also about the survey. There has been many criticism about how the survey was built and the questions, which, for example, didn't really ask directly if Albertans wanted coal or not, and the fact also that the survey was not based on random sampling. Those are pretty big issues when it comes to building a survey that could lead to people wonder if the results truly represent Albertans' opinions on the issue. What can you respond to that?
Well, to start with, the very first line on the survey itself was, "This is an initial survey." It's meant exclusively to guide the work and the engagement that the coal committee will use from it. So it's not the end of it. It's the very start of it, and it was used to just gauge a range of opinions on what issues matter, so that the coal committee could then take that input and design what the consultations are looking for. To be clear, the survey is not the consultations. The survey is to form the basis of what the engagement would look like. And to be really clear, that initial survey is why we're here today, to put a pause on coal exploration, because Albertans in that survey told us, told our government, and told the coal committee that those explorations needed to be halting pending the outcome. So that was the intent of the initial survey, gauge the views of Albertans on a very preliminary basis, so the committee knew what to focus on going forward. So you'll be hearing from the coal committee on what their engagement process will be going forward. To be clear, engagement is just starting.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you.
Okay. Operator, can you please put through the last caller?
Bob Weber, Canadian Press.
Hello, thanks for taking the call. A couple of questions. First one for Mr. Wallace. Ron, it sounds like the original terms of reference are out the window now, and people will be able to talk about whatever they want to talk about. My question is, in the original terms of reference, there were some. There was a line about the committee only reporting on matters that were raised according to the original terms of reference. My question to you is, will you commit to publicly reporting on everything that Albertans tell the committee?
Well, thanks for that, Bob, and thanks for the question. Yes. I want to acknowledge that our committee mandate excludes some matters that do not relate directly to coal development, but I want the public to understand that the Minister of Energy, in conjunction with the Alberta Energy Regulator, has very broad powers to hear, regulate, and control coal development in Alberta. In short, the public can be assured that any and all concerns voiced by Albertans with regard to the planning, regulation, development, or potential impacts of coal development in Alberta will be heard respectfully, considered carefully, and will be accurately reported to the Minister of Energy. You may anticipate that recommendations will be made to the Minister for policy changes that reflect the broadest public interest of all Albertans. Does that answer your question, Bob?
I guess. My follow-up question then will go to the Minister, and it's in two parts. Once the committee makes its full report to you, will the Minister commit to releasing it in its entirety to the public? And the second part of that question is about First Nations. Is there going to be, as you promised earlier, government-to-government consultations with First Nations?
The answer to both of those questions are yes. We will release the full report. And yes, we will be doing government-to-government, nation-to-nation consultations with First Nations. I've met with a number of the chiefs directly already. We will be continuing to do that to hear directly from their concerns. And I just want to add a little bit to the scope of the terms of reference, just to add to some of what Ron had just said. And I think I would go back to say, of course, Albertans, I know Albertans, I've been an Albertan for over 50 years of my life, and you can't tell an Albertan what they can and can't talk about. So, of course, Albertans are going to talk. When they're talking about coal, they want to talk about the impacts it have on them, on the impacts on the environment, on water, the impacts on everything. And, of course, they'll be able to talk about that, and we want to hear those concerns. But these consultations are about coal policy, and I think it's not about the broader land use planning initiatives. It's not about broader water allocations downstream between agriculture and municipal users. It's about coal. So notably, let's get the coal policy and vision done first, and then from there it's going to determine if, what, and when other processes might or might not be necessary. For instance, if there's to be no coal development in a particular area, then obviously downstream impacts of coal on water allocations or on water or anything is going to be moot, and it would be well beyond the scope of these consultations. So let's get it right first and get the coal policy and vision and come forward to see if there's some other processes the government needs to do. And so let's just move on from some of these partisan political stunts that we're seeing, and that's what it is. Over the last several weeks, we've seen a month-long, week-long partisan political stunt coming from the opposition, in order to distract from their own record promoting coal. And their own record was starting in May of 2016, when the previous government completely bypassed the 1976 coal policy in a letter telling the AER that nothing in that coal policy precluded development of a surface mine in Category 2 lands. The media is not talking about that, but this whole situation started in 2016, when that letter opened the door to all the coal activity that we're looking at today, and all the same coal activity that the opposition party is now opposed to. So I would just say, let's move forward with these meaningful consultations. Let's go back to Albertans. Let's hear their views. Let's move forward with a credible policy.
I'm going to ensure that the minister always has the last words. And I want to reiterate something on behalf of the committee. Any governmental regulatory framework is founded on policy. Policies ultimately direct developmental, regulatory, and conservation programs. The Coal Policy Committee and the public engagement process which we're developing represents a material opportunity for Albertans, all Albertans, to be heard and to provide direction to government as to how those policies, those foundational policies, should be formulated to reflect the widest public interest. The committee represents an opportunity for Albertans to be heard and to participate in the development of a new modernized coal policy for Alberta, one that will reflect the views of Albertans and that will provide direction as to how future coal exploration may or may not proceed. In recent days, we've heard many voices that have commented on our work. However, today I urge Albertans not to accept any premature assumptions about our work or about our conclusions, but instead to judge the committee by the outcome of our work and our consultations and engagement with the public. In that regard, I'm inviting all Albertans to be heard and to come and participate with us in this pivotal work. While we respect every voice in a vibrant democracy, we urge Albertans to understand that this committee that this minister has formed is a genuine opportunity to directly shape recommendations for policies that will affect resource development and resource management outcomes for generations to come. Thank you, Minister.
And I would just only add to that, please, Albertans, please participate in this process. The committee is looking for your views as we move forward with this process, with these processes that will follow. We want to hear your views. We want to understand what you would like to see with the modern coal policy. So please participate. Thank you.
And that concludes this news conference. Thank you.